Hey guys, this is Don. This is the 16th installment of Just Lover. Thoughts on how to not just live in, but glorify God in the middle of an open quote bad, close quote marriage. Hey, thanks for tuning in again. Unbelievably grateful. Anybody who's listening, grateful. Don, if you want to connect with me, it's resource4christ@gmail.com. Resource4christ@gmail.com. Today, number 16, the talk, the installment is basically going to be on suffering. There's kind of an exciting little deal, huh? Suffering. And this is a two-parter, but I think it'll be good. Quote break. Going to have two quotes for today. Nothing can separate me from his love, not even my open quote bad, close quote marriage. And my proof text will be Romans 8:31-39. I don't even know what's going on here for a second. Sorry. There we go. That was weird. It was stopwatch or something. But nothing can separate me from his love, not even my open quote bad, close quote marriage. And the reason I'm putting that in there, when you're in the middle of it, you're going to have a tendency and want to think that God hates you. And the sad part is the reason is because you made a higher priority of the love of your wife over the love of God. You idolized her, and her love became more precious to you than his. And then what happens is that's going to blow up because she can't handle that pressure. Remember, she's a 2-ton bridge, and life is a 20-ton truck. She can't handle that pressure. The only one that can handle that is God. That's why he has to remain in that number one spot. And so, but when you're in the middle of it, when she starts to implode, you're going to think that God doesn't love you anymore. That's never true. Romans 8:31-30. There's tons of places in the Bible that say that. Quote 2, you are my source. Obviously, Jesus. She is my resource. She's something that God gave me. But when I reverse the orders, when I make her my bad wife, my source, and Jesus my resource, that's when you're going to get into those problems of the first quote. You're going to think that God doesn't love you. Why? Because you switched the priorities. Now, why do I know these things, guys? Because I did that, and I'm doing that. This whole thing primarily, the reason I'm doing this is because we idolize our wives. That's why the just love her. Don't idolize her. Don't make her a little g God. Just love her. And the way we love her is the way Ephesians chapter 5, the way Jesus, we're going to look at that today, the way Jesus loved the church. But many times we think that idolizing her, nothing from nothing is nothing. You got to be something if you want to be with me. Billy Preston, 1970s. I don't know. But see, we see ourselves as nothing, and our lives stink, and we're empty and unfulfilled, etc. So we literally are worshiping our wives, and we're calling it love. It's not love. It's not love. That's idolatry. So he is my source, she is my resource. My proof text for that is Psalm 16:11. So let's pray. Jesus, thank you so much for loving us. I want to pray for each one of the guys and maybe women who are listening. I'm going to believe that they are listening. They're in trouble. They're hurting. They're anxious. They're fearful, angry. Maybe want to hurt themselves, maybe want to use a substance, maybe want to have an affair, maybe stuck in pornography. They're running to all kinds of other idols. Today, I'd ask that you would help them understand that suffering is okay. It is your wonderful, painful process of weaning us away from our idols and helping us refocus on you. Thank you. I am absolutely sure that you're going to do something amazing today, and it'll be in spite of me, not because of me. You are cool. I am not. Thank you for what you're going to do. Okay. Quick reminder. Quick reminder. I was and am a massive jerk. Okay. Because I was such a jerk when I first got married, my wife healthfully, that's my word, healthfully divorced me. We were divorced for 7 years. God brought us back together within like 5.5 years. We started dating for like a year and a half after that, and then got married 7 years later. We have been together for almost 15 years now. For 2 of the years of the 7 that I was divorced, I had daily thoughts of killing myself. I was in full-time ministry at the time. We were in a head pastorate because I was a dingbat. I lost that. And then from there, God placed us where I started doing substance abuse counseling. But the reason I'm saying this is that you may be in emotional, relational trouble right now. And the phrase I gave earlier is dare to hope. But not dare to hope in your wife or yourself. Dare to hope in Jesus. That's Lamentations 3. Amazing. God gave me that. It was the primary phrase that God gave me to keep going. Wait for a miracle. Here it is. This makes me sad to say this, but the waiting is going to be painful. This is what we're going to talk about. Probably the next 2 or 3 installments are going to be on suffering and pain. Wait for the miracle, but the miracle will be marinating in pain and suffering, but you're never alone. When you go through deep waters, I will be with you. When you go through the fire, you won't get burned. You won't drown. I'm going to be with you. Okay. Exodus 14, stand still and watch the salvation of the Lord, which he will accomplish for you today. The Lord will fight for you while you keep silent. Shut up. During this painful time, you're going to say all kinds of stupid things and you're going to regret it. Keep quiet and trust Jesus. And even if you open your mouth and blow it up, that's okay. Though we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he cannot deny himself. Okay? We don't have to do it perfectly because he already has. But we rest in him, trust in him, not ourselves or our wives. In God's grace, don't run from the pain. You will, but don't. Little by little, remind yourself that he loves you, he's wise, and he's sovereign. He's in charge. He turns our hell into good stuff. He recycles pain. Now, the reason I'm telling you this may sound weird, but there's my God-given credentials to be able to talk about suffering. I'm not going to bore you with stuff, but there's a little bit of a snippet of what God has brought me through. But I'm going to say this right now. I'm still, right now, the last 3 years have been the worst, most difficult 3 years of my life. Even today, I'm going to try to be honest. I was overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed with like anxiety and fear today. I don't know why, but I'm going to believe God's going to do something cool because of that. God is teaching me that I don't have to feel together. I don't have to have my act together. And even if I'm feeling unnerved or whatever, I'm going to trust Jesus, not with his help. I feel better now that I'm talking, but man, I've been up since probably 5:30 this morning. And just lots of anxiety. I'm going to believe what I'm starting. When that stuff comes, that I'm viewing that as God's evidence that he is with me. That he's with me. Why? When I'm weak, he's strong. He's reminding me that I'm weak and I got nothing to give. And so I'm going to believe that God's going to do something here. Okay. This is fairly easy to write down. And maybe talk about. But the stuff that I'm going to give today and have been giving is impossible to live out. See, there's a huge difference between hearing something, that doesn't do anything. Remembering something, that just means you have a good memory. But putting something into practice, that requires dependence on Jesus. There ain't no way we are going to be able to do this unless we learn to rest in the fact that apart from him, I can do nothing. Remembering something just makes you arrogant. Attempting to put something into practice and change, that's humbling, and realize I can't do it. And the reason I'm saying these things are impossible is I'm just going to look at Ephesians 5. The directive in Ephesians 5 says the husbands are to, open quote, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Are you kidding me? In what? In any context, is there really? I'm supposed to love the way Jesus loves? I can't do that. Remember, ought does not equal can. And so the second I see this, initially I thought, oh, yeah, they're going to do that. No, I can't. I can't even get close to that. I can't do this, Jesus. I'm going to get a prayer later. Would you love my wife through me, because I can't do it? Can anybody do that? No. Looking at that Ephesians 5, 25 to 30 stuff, are you kidding me? That's crazy. And to say I'm supposed to love anything the way Jesus does, can't do it. Now, he will do it through us. He'll do it through us, but we can't do it. Without grace and the Holy Spirit doing this in and through us, it's just never going to happen. If you've been watching these YouTube things, live streams or whatever, and you perceive yourself as having a, open quote, and I'm going to slow down because I want you to catch this, and you perceive yourself as having a, open quote, bad, close quote, wife in a, open quote, bad, close quote, marriage, is there a possibility you might be expecting, or worse, demanding, that she, open quote, give herself up, close quote, for you rather than the other way around? See, is there a possibility that you have the mindset that she's a bad wife? You're going to have to catch the earlier sections to understand what I mean by bad wife. I don't want to go into that today. But if you're stuck believing that it's her fault and she's making your marriage stink, and oh my goodness, false advertising, she's not at all who she presented herself to be, or I thought she would be, it's her fault, here it is. There's every likelihood that you're demanding that she give up her life for you rather than the other way around, Ephesians 5:25. Because please listen, if you were giving your life up for her, there's no way in blank that she could be a bad wife. No way. No way. You would be on your knees with tears saying, oh God, thank you for this beautiful, perfect gift you gave me. I'm not saying that this is suffering. This is suffering. This is what it means to suffer. Romans 12:1, I daily sacrifice, like we talked about yesterday. And it's painful. Is there a possibility that you're experiencing suffering in your marriage, ready, because you're not loving your, open quote, bad, close quote, wife in the same way Jesus loves her? See, if we were loving her the way Jesus already loves her, there wouldn't be a problem. We'd be unbelievably grateful. We'd actually realize that we don't deserve her. I didn't say she's perfect. I didn't say she didn't hurt us. I'm not saying that's not the point. Look at what we did to Jesus. Look at how we've hurt him. Look at how we've run to other idols. And he keeps loving us. That's the way we're supposed to love our wives. And again, this is why I'm saying it's impossible to do without Jesus doing it through us. But that's what he's calling us to do. And here it is. Change occurs best in an atmosphere of love and acceptance. You want her to change? Leave her alone. Love and accept her in the way Jesus loves and accepts us. We'll change. That's what he does for us. And here it is. Then the world will see that marriage is possible. Godly, amazing, supernatural love in marriage is possible. And this will be our primary evangelistic tool for a lost world that can't do marriage apart from him. I am unbelievably grateful that someone suggested I read C.S. Lewis's Four Loves. I don't know who. And you can get it on Audible. It's like he's given lectures. You can barely understand the bad recording in his goofy English accent, but it's still priceless. Got the little book somewhere here. Not that it matters. A little teeny thing. In it, I read and thought of his, which initially energized, but eventually drained me, this quote. I saw it and, oh, wow, that's really cool. But now I'm in the mode of I can't do anything apart from Jesus. It actually kind of brings despair and humility because I can't do it. To love my wife the way Lewis describes Jesus loving his church is insightful to read, but impossible to do without God doing it through me. Too much pain, too much suffering, too much inadequacy on my part, too much selfishness on my part, too much me firstness on my part. She's here to fulfill me, not me to give my life for her. And that gets in the way. Kind of crazy. Here's the quote. Long quote. That's okay. Long quote. The husband is the head of the wife just insofar as he is to her what Christ is to the church, and give his life for her. Ephesians 5:25. This headship then is most fully embodied not in the husband we should all wish to be ready, but in him whose marriage is most like a crucifixion. Ouch. Whose wife receives most and gives least, is most unworthy of him, is in her own mere nature least lovable, really hard to love. For the church has not beauty, but what the bridegroom gives her. He does not find, but makes her lovely. The chrism, symbolizing a baptism, I had to look up that word, of this terrible coronation is to be seen not in the joys of any man's marriage, but in its sorrows, in the sickness and sufferings of a good wife or in the faults of a bad one, in his unwavering, never paraded care or his inexhaustible forgiveness not acquiescence, like giving into, this is wrong, I choose to forgive you. I'm not going to give in. I don't have to present that, but I'm not going to, but I'll forgive you. As Christ sees in the flawed, proud, fanatical, or lukewarm church on earth that bride who will one day be without spot or wrinkle, and labors to produce the latter, so the husband whose headship is Christ-like, and he is allowed no other sort, never despairs. 1 Corinthians 13, doesn't give up. He is a King Coptua who after 20 years still hopes the beggar girl will one day learn to speak the truth and wash behind her ears. Jesus, I can't do this. Would you do it through me? I think the only time I think the only thing I can do at this time in presenting this little section is to pray and ask forgiveness for my self-centeredness. At the same time, thank God for his grace that he makes it possible and gives me hope that he can live this out through me. I can't do it. This quote in Ephesians chapter 5's great mystery for and towards my amazing wife, it's just going to have to be God's grace. Prayer. I don't know how often I do this, but prayer. Sorry, just water, but my voice is really dry. Prayer. Jesus, I'm a complete mess. I'm so selfish and self-centered. I haven't sacrificed for my wife. I've demanded that she sacrifice for me. Boy, that makes me sad. I've demanded that she love me like you love your church. God, I'm so grateful that you love me just as much as you love Jesus, John 17. And I'd ask that you miraculously take the love that you've given me and pass it on to my wife through me. In your power, someday give me the ability to daily love her the way you've already loved her, me, and your church. Thank you for listening, Jesus. Okay? Thanks, Jesus. Okay, we're going to jump on to part 2. This is just suffering part 2. Some 40 years ago in a New Testament survey class I had at the time, during the first day of class, during the introduction, I can't believe I can remember his name, Dr. Ekman, my professor said, some of you may be wondering what God's will is for your life. Well, you're standing in it. I mean, that was like 1979. I can't believe I can still read it. I was so blown away by that because at that age, I'm going, God, what do you want me to do with life? What am I doing here? And oh, this is crazy. I got into college on probation. I don't even know how I graduated high school, but I know this. I didn't know how to study. I had dyslexia. I couldn't read. The only book I ever read was The Hobbit. And while I was in class, I took the biggest book I had, my sociology book or American something, and I had a motocross action magazine behind it. I don't even know how I made it through. So I didn't know what I was doing. And so I'm saying, God, what am I doing here? And he goes, you want to know God's will? You're standing in it. Basically, what he was saying was that God doesn't have a plan B. What you're standing in, where you're currently at, what you're currently going through. Now, you may not like it and may be full of suffering and pain, but guys, please, can I say this out loud? Just because something hurts doesn't mean it wasn't God's will. Acts, James gets murdered. Peter gets rescued from prison. Both of those were God's sovereign plan A will for them. James' wife, sad. Peter's wife, excited. Both of those were God's plan A. One very painful, the other very rejoicive. Both God's plan A. I'm going to say this again. Please don't let your brain consider that just because your marriage is difficult and you and your wife are having problems, that it wasn't his will. God didn't die on the cross so that we could be successful. God didn't die on the cross to make our lives easy and full of comfort. He promised that there would be pain and suffering. And why wouldn't it be in marriage? It's the hardest thing on earth. We mess up when we think that God doesn't love us because he's not making us successful. I think that I struggle with that all the time. I want to read this. What he was saying was that God doesn't have a plan B. What we're standing in, what you're currently going through, is God's plan A. God's plan A will for your life, even if, here it is, even if you sin getting there. Even if you sinned getting there. You meant it for evil, God meant it for good. This was God's plan. Psalms 105. And God sent his man ahead of time. His brothers were sinning, but they were still doing God's will, and God didn't sin in the process. Basically, what he's saying was that God doesn't have plan Bs. What you're standing in, what you're currently going through, is God's plan A. God's plan A will for your life, even if you sin getting there. There, let's keep going. Let me say it again, even though I've said it 3 times. If you're standing in it, that's God's plan A. That's God's will for your life. And so the goal is where you're at right now in the middle of your bad marriage with your bad wife. God, how can I surrender to your will? Where's my thing? I'm gonna, here it is. I am the Lord's servant, and I am willing to accept whatever he wants. Luke 1:38. This is God's plan for my life. God, how can I surrender and fit in with your plan and let my plan go? That's the Matthew 14 passage of, you're going to hang on to your life, you're going to lose it. You let go of your life, I'll give you a John 10:10 life. And it's not easy. It's not easy. We set our goals and ask God to bless it and then somehow say that's God's will. And then when it blows up, we blame him. No, the goal is that we surrender, we submit, we ask for humility, we look at where we're at, and we say, God, how can I fit in? And here it is, it ain't easy. Proverbs 16:33 says that he controls everything, even something as inconsequential as the outcome of rolled dice. He's in charge. I gotta hurry up. I'm talking a lot today. Okay. Excuse me. Proverbs 21:1 says, the king's heart is like a stream of water directed by the Lord. He guides it wherever he pleases. If this was true, which it is, of the most independently powerful earthly leader in the then known world, why wouldn't it be true of us as well? There were no branches of government. The king was sovereign. He could do whatever he wanted. Nobody could tell him what to do except God. And so this literally says, the king's heart is like a stream that God directs. He's even in charge of this massively important, terribly powerful person. Well, here it is. Then why wouldn't that be true of us? I'm just going to read this. Since this is true, how can you and I consider the possibility that our marriages aren't God's will? He directed it. He directed our hearts like a stream. And just because it's hard and just because it's difficult and just because you're not getting satisfied and fulfilled doesn't mean it's not God's will. And I'm saying that with like tears behind my eyes. I'm not being arrogant. No, because I understand the pain of it. I understand the pain of it. But our priority is glorifying God, not our satisfaction, fulfillment, ease, and comfort. Is there a possibility that the main problem isn't that our marriage isn't God's will? It's that we want our will more than His. Let's spell this. I'm going to read it again. Is there a possibility the main problem isn't that our marriage isn't God's will? It's that we want our will more than His, and His will is our wife, whom God has put together. This entire series is going to be like this. And I'm just going to throw it. I may be saying some hard things, but which is going to be worse? You losing everything through divorce, or me saying some hard things here? And understand it, I've been through it. And I'm currently going through a lot of pain and stuff because God is in the process of weaning me away from my will and my plans. And I'm saying, God, thank you. I'm not going to ask for it, but I'm looking back. I now can look back and say, God, thanks. But I'm in the middle of it and been through it. And you don't want a divorce. You may be looking at other options, but I guarantee you this, you do not want a divorce. And please listen, I'm going to say this as compassionately as I can. As you stick it out and you see that God is changing you, eventually you will be unbelievably grateful for God keeping you in the marriage. Today, I'm not going to be specific, but today I told my wife that she is priceless. In the past, I saw her as a drain, an open quote, bad, close quote wife. But that I told her, no matter what I tell you, this is my problem, not yours. It's just taking years to figure it out and God doing His work because I'm so stubborn and sinful. But today I did a little bike ride this morning and came home and was able to think, oh, that's why I'm grateful for bike rides. I'm saying you're priceless. As you hang on and don't quit and don't do stupid stuff, God is going to change you. He's put you in this tumbler of marriage. And yes, it's going to be painful. And yes, it's going to hurt. But He loves you. He will never leave you or forsake you. Stick it out. And here it is. Check it out. He's going to continue to change you, whether you get a divorce or do something stupid or not. He's going to continue to change you. But the problem is, as He changes you, you're going to have regrets because now He will have changed you and you will have the insight, understanding of where you screwed up and where your perception was wrong. And then you're going to say, doggone it, big mistake, big mistake. I can't even tell you how many times I've heard that in counseling sessions. Big mistake. I'm going to just read this. When we think this business, our will over His, what we're actually saying is that our open quote, bad, close quote marriage is the first mistake that God ever made. What we're saying is that our plan A for our marriage is better than God's plan A for our marriage. I don't think we want to go there. Sovereignty. That's a big church word that means God's in charge of everything. I'm sure there's other words that, but I'm going to stick with the sovereignty thing. Basically, everything He wants to happen, happens. Whatever He wants to happen, happen. Nothing He doesn't want to happen, ever happens. I got 2 minutes left here. Proverbs 16:1. Mortals make elaborate plans, but God has the last word. Love that. That's from the Message. Proverbs 16:33. Make your motions and cast your votes, but God has the final say. That's so cool. Okay. Revelation 13:10. Anyone who is destined for prison is going to be taken to prison. Anyone destined to die by the sword is going to die by the sword. You want to know God's will for your life? Even if you got stabbed or in prison, you may not like it, but here it is. That's God's plan for your life. And why? He does it all the time. That's His plan for your life. So getting stabbed and stuck in prison, seems probably a little worse than your bad marriage. If He does it, if He gets people stuck with a sword and stuck in prison, why wouldn't he do his work through a bad marriage? Many other verses throughout the Bible state that whatever God has determined for us, whatever his plan A is, it's going to happen. Here it is. Is there a possibility that that is true in your bad marriage? In the context of this little streaming and what God and the Bible have to say, you may not like it. You may not like your plan A, but if you're wondering God's will for your open quote bad, close quote marriage, you're standing in it. Okay. Love you guys. Thanks. Bye.